it is my true honor to introduce John Olgin from El Paso Community College. What I love about John is his passion and his willingness to share. He's always sharing and teaching us and helping us learn and get better at what we do. And I really appreciate that. So, John, I appreciate you being here today to do the same, to share with us. And John is going to be sharing how he uses some of the Globe products, including Lego satellite data and Globe Observer in his outreach activities with local museums, classrooms, and community events. So without further ado, John, take it away.
All right, howdy everybody from El Paso. We are suffering in 65-degree weather, just to let you guys know, just to share that a little bit. But it's been great so far, thank God. I mean, a lot of interesting things I kind of wanted to share with you all. Let me see if I can move this stuff around. And a lot of the cool things that I wanted to share with you are just some of the things that I was able to utilize or bring into the scope of some of the outreach that I do with some of the local community here in the El Paso, Texas international area, since we also share a border with Juarez, Mexico, Juarez, Chihuahua. And so this is just kind of like an overall kind of overview of some of the stuff that we've actually covered and starting to get more students, more teachers, educators, informal and formal, to get more interested into the actual program. And some of the things I'll be leading up and focusing on is some of the collaborations, future collaborations that we're going to be having or that we're trying to do with the University of Texas at El Paso in utilizing some of the outreach connections that we've already established, and to see how some of the same things that would how we actually can use the Globe Observer app, some of the protocols, and even some of the interactive activities that have been posted there on the website there for Globe, how we've actually been able to use that pretty successfully and actually getting a lot of really, I mean, really integrated like workshops for the kids and little like science camps over the summer and actually over the fall too that have been really successful with some of the Globe products. So one of the things I wanted to bring up to really quick overall is just one of the outreaches that we do with Tornillo Elementary School. To give you an idea, El Paso, it's from maybe about 30 minutes, 45 minutes away from downtown El Paso. It's out in the rural area community, also near one of the port of entries into Mexico. But a lot of the students are very keen in learning more about like their environment, because that area is specifically an agricultural region where a lot of pecans are being grown and cotton in that region. And actually one of the programs at UTEP is actually looking into using some satellite data and taking a look at some of the stuff that is, taking a look at the vegetation and the environmental changes that are happening in that area. And one of the things that we wanted to do is start involving the younger generation in understanding about their environment from a grassroots level, if you will. So one of the things that we wanted to do is start to get them more involved, more in tuned with the environment that they're in, especially like I just mentioned, it was mostly an agricultural region, so that they can actually start to use some of their expertise as they grow on, because a lot of the farming community is very interactive with the younger generation, so they can utilize some of the Globe products here. So one of the things that we did was provide use of the Globe Observer app, showing them how the app works, going outside, taking observations of cloud data, and also starting to encourage them to use also the land cover app that's actually in the app. And so it's been very fruitful. It's been actually very interesting. One of the things I thought was very, very cool about interacting with the little kids, even basically from kindergarten all the way through seventh grade. I noticed that the second graders were pretty sharp, and they were really, really interested, especially since there was a dust storm around the time that we actually went, and they were really, really curious as to why these dust storms were happening. How can we learn more about dust storms? How can we use some of the tools that I was providing them from the Globe program? How can they actually, learn more? Because they were really eager, and it was good that the dust storm did happen, although it's not that great when it does happen here in the El Paso area. A lot of problems, stem from that, but the curiosity was there. And so I was able to utilize that in, integrating some of the Globe products, and some of them are right there. One of them is on the left is the Skyviewer that is provided through Globe program, and also the older one that's used from the I borrowed from also the NCAR UCAR website. It's a little cloud viewer. Again, the same thing. The same principle is that you basically cut a hole in the middle of this particular interactive um, document here, and then the students, the kids, can actually hoist that paper up into the sky and then try to match the atmospheric conditions to the images that are on the periphery of the document. So some people were learning about cirrus clouds at that day. I think it was we were looking at mostly cirrus clouds, almost a clear day, but there were some contrails that were visible. There were some high level clouds. What does that signify? Why is it important to learn about clouds? How does that tell us a little bit about the weather to come and what's happening right now? They really, really, really love this interactive demonstration. And so, as you're going to see in some of the other photos right now, the students from grades, I mean, mostly from second grade all the way through seventh grade, they were really in tune and trying to understand more. They were asking me a lot of questions. They were really engaged in some of the other physics related demonstrations that I was able to tie into the actual presentation to the younger students so that they understand the connection of understanding the atmosphere conditions and how they can actually use or how the satellites actually view from above the weather conditions and the atmosphere conditions when it comes to clouds. How can we use that to get a good picture and understanding of what's going on in our region? So that's me. Those are some of the display boards that we actually bring into every presentation that we have, whether it be at the Science Museum or otherwise. That's me in the classroom. This is I guess about third graders right here that I'm working with. And over here in the middle picture, that's me. Also in the background, that's also another information board with how to use and install the Globe Observer app on your phone. Now, the really interesting thing about this is that it's both in English and Spanish. We have a very diverse community, bilingual community in this particular region, especially with the younger children. They are predominantly speaking Spanish. As you get older, I guess into the like middle school grades, they're more bilingual. So we have that for our advantage. So we're able to, connect with them in both languages, and that actually helps them also with understanding certain, physical processes from both perspectives. And so that's kind of giving them a little bit of an advantage as well when they're learning more about science. And so this, as you can see, let me see if I can move this thing here over here to the side. As you can see on the third picture on the far right, again, the students were starting to learn. They were getting their scissors out. They were starting to cut out, and then we would go outside or really just outside by the window. I mean, we didn't have that much time in this particular event. So we just went up. We all went out to the windows, and everybody was looking through the little sky viewers and trying to identify the cloud conditions and what do these aerosols mean and why are sunsets more red than others. This engagement helped them build that connection with their environment. They were able to understand a little bit more about, these types of atmospheric conditions and learn a little bit more about the aerosols. Another thing that I was also passing out, especially to the educators, some of the teachers there and other educators, were these pamphlets about the little workbooks, study books about did you know that the clouds have names both in English and in Spanish? I also passed out infographics on how to determine and how to study and what do the contrails mean when you look at them, whether it be short-lived or persistent spreading of these contrails. What does that tell you about the atmosphere? A lot of the students like that, and especially the teachers love the little workbooks talking about aerosols. And I pass those out to the educators as well, so they can actually implement those ideas and techniques, and also showing them the websites too, more Globe products and more resources for them. So this was a really, really great way to engage some of the students, especially in the rural setting, because I think when you're, at least it's been in my experience, that when you get students outside learning about their environment, getting dirty and whatnot, that helps build their experience a lot better as opposed to just being stuck in the classroom. This allowed them, they took all these little sky viewers home, and they were, and from previous feedback from some of the teachers I continue to work with there, they said it has been very helpful for them because their curiosity continued. And so this is something that they were always probing about their teachers. Well, I have this little thing that big guy gave us when we were, when he was giving all these cool talks and stuff. And so, yeah, this is the Skyviewer. And so they're utilizing some of these techniques into their classrooms and hope to do some more outreach specifically with the teachers, which I'll talk a little bit toward the end of the presentation. But this is one of the fun, um, one of the very fun projects that activities I was able to go and work with. And so one of the takeaways, a lot of the good takeaways from this was a lot of high engagement with students, and especially as they got older, clearly, especially in the middle school, that seems to be the sweet spot where they're able to really grasp and really ask questions and really take off with the sciences into the science of environmental science specifically. Their interest about cloud storms, especially since I just mentioned we were just going through a dust storm at that time, they wanted to know more. Why do we have these dust storms? Why are some of the dust storms different colors, actually? That was also really interesting description and some of the things that they were able to observe from their vantage point, since they're closer to where one of the playas, dry playas over in Chihuahua, in the Chihuahuan desert, that tends to be a little bit more white, as opposed to if the winds come from a different direction, it'll blow sand, it's a little bit darker. So you get a different mix, and that also helps them paint a picture. And using some of the techniques that I use for also my dissertation, which is model-based reasoning, they're getting their experiences at a young age and building this mental map, this mental story map, if you will, so they can actually make more sense of their environment. Again, increase interest in STEM. This is mainly from the teachers. A lot of them were starting to ask questions. Some got some more, again, like I said, passing out more information about how they can actually incorporate some of these resources into their classrooms. And then the bilingual fact sheets, super key. And I mean, very, very key, because like I said, this specific community is very, very bilingual, leaning more towards Spanish speakers, as opposed to like coming into the city where we do see like about a maybe 40, 60 bilingual capability for some of the students. So these bilingual fact sheets were very important in an earlier meeting that I had this morning with the Globe, getting some more information also from the Latin American group and the Caribbean. They kind of gave me they posted up some more information in Spanish, which is going to be helpful for us, because as we start to do more outreach with rural communities and such, it's going to definitely help us a lot, especially here in the El Paso area. So those are just some of the really good results that were just coming from that specific engagement. Now, the next one is what I thought was very interesting. I thought that was a lot of fun over the summer. La Nube summer and fall camps. So La Nube is one of the newest science museums that's actually been established here in the El Paso area. It's been a little over about a year since their inception, and it has brought in a ton of people from Juarez, from the El Paso area, even as far as Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is about 30 minutes away from downtown El Paso. So this was one of the things that one of our colleagues from the planetarium tried to get us, like, a great connection, and we have now developed this great rapport and collaboration now with the Science Museum, that really now kind of lean on us to provide all the additional, like, science from the physics and astronomy and even now environmental perspective, that they wanted that to be one of the main focuses for some of their summer camps and fall camps. And so this time we're actually bringing in some more, I guess you see, more visual stuff dealing with satellite data. And I thought it might be an interesting way to incorporate the satellite data activities that Holly Call actually developed, which we'll see in just a little bit. And it was great with the kids. Huge hit. I mean, it's with Legos, and I'm like, I love Legos. Who doesn't love Legos, except when you step on them on bare feet? I'm not going to go there, but you get the idea. It's great. It is so awesome that the students, I mean, these kids were like engaged in this activity. And I'll go ahead and kind of continue talking about that right now. So what we did for them using Legos and satellite data was to understand a little bit more about land cover. Land cover, of course, here in the desert, you may think it's actually kind of plain, but we actually have very distinct features, from mountainous to volcanic to agricultural to just plain desert to urban areas. So we do have a diverse type of land cover, land use in our region, right? And it's kind of good that we expose these kids to to that so that they can understand, be aware of their surroundings even more so. And then coming up with the idea of using satellite data. What does a really high bird's eye view look like as opposed to looking at a ground level? What can you learn from the both perspectives? Just like you would do with clouds, how can we use those two perspectives to actually get a better understanding of our surroundings at the surface? So what we did was, this is kind of like taken from the presentation I gave. These are just some of the links, a little bit about me from the the website that I have there with Globe. Also, the science of clouds is important. So if you click on this link, I won't for time purposes, but the science of clouds was kind of important because it's important to understand the atmospheric conditions of the wonderful desert, even though it doesn't rain that much. But we do have some flooding, especially with the monsoons. And during the summer, it was great to bring in that aspect. How do the monsoons actually change the surface of the El Paso area and the Juarez area for that matter as well? How do these monsoons affect surface and land cover changes? What kind of things do you expect? Why do we study land cover? We talked a little bit more about that and get to know the GLOBE program, which goes right back to the website to learn a little bit more about what GLOBE stands for and what it does for education and research purposes. So this is the main part. So I had them for a day. And so the kids were able to actually go into go in building with Legos. And so La Nube provided all the Legos that for this type of activity. And what was cool is the idea was for them to build a satellite first. I wanted them to get used to getting on have fun building Legos. So the idea was we're going to build a satellite. And then I told everybody, once you're done building your satellite in your group, we're going to launch them and we're going to like run around the whole entire little like venue that we were at, this big, huge, I guess you could say big forum area. And they just ran around pretending like there were rockets. And okay, now we're going to go into orbit, guys. And so we kind of go into orbit around their tables. And then okay, we're going to now take pictures, and then we're going to take pictures of the Earth. And then they all ran over to the table, and they were going to take pictures of the Earth. So when they took pictures of the Earth, and then I would display it on the main screen, this huge screen that was in this area, they were saying, okay, now I want you to replicate what you see from, you're going to take a picture from your satellite that you just built, and you're going to take a picture of the ground, and this is what your satellite just took a picture of, but it's all pixelated. And that's part of what that activity is all about, to basically use the Legos to basically interpret what you see from that image from the satellite. So what kind of satellite were they building? Let me click on this. And they were basically building this Go satellite. And so here we have out of Legos as best they could. That looks like this. Clearly they were using their imagination when they were building these satellites. So they had lots of creative ways of building that satellite that you see there on the screen. So it was actually kind of interesting to see. But at least they had an idea, a template, if you will, how to build something for those of them that were not very, in tune with building with Legos. So going back over here to the main presentation, the cool thing about this is, whoa, hold on a second. I don't know why that happened. We go back here. And so there we go. So this is the activity that Holly Call made, and we based our presentation, our activity on that, and learning how to interpret satellite data or images that are coming from satellites is really important. How are these kids going to be able to then replicate what they see in the image using Legos and then try to make sense of what it is? And this kind of helps them, with some of the links that I showed you previously, they were able to learn a little bit more about how satellites work, how they were actually able to, get data, how that data is interpreted. And I was actually very surprised. A lot of the kids were very sharp when it came in, especially one in particular. She was very, very sharp on identifying images, and the majority of the kids, I'd say maybe, just looking at it, probably about 75% of them knew what was going on. That satellites go out there and they take pictures, and they said, but they didn't know other than anything more than that. And said, well, let's dive into that. We're going to take a look at what kind of pictures these satellites take. And the image on the left is a pixelated version of the image of the right. The image of the right is a region just about an hour away from the El Paso region, and that white spot that you see is White Sands. So the mountains to the left, these are the Oregon Mountains, the ones to the right, Sacramento. The black portion that you see is not actually a body of water. It's actually a um, lava field region here from one of the volcanoes that erupted millions of years ago. And you also get to see this region where you have greenish area where you have the forest, where it's Cloudcroft and Ruidoso. Then that's about 9,000 feet or so. Go all the way down to the base where the White Sands is. You're about 4,000 feet above sea level, and then you kind of go back. So you see the basin and the mountain ranges on the side. But that's the clear image on the right. What I gave the kids was the image on the left. They really can't make sense out of it, but could they build it? Could they replicate it using Legos? And so what they did was just that. So the results from the students or from the kids, they were able to do the best. This is one of the better ones I thought, where he was able this boy was able to actually get the green part that you see on the pixelated image, the white sand part, but didn't quite finish because we were running out of time on this one. But he was working on the left side to build the mountain range, and so they were able to starting to make sense with their Legos of what it could be. And I would ask them, "All right, what do you think the green part is?" And some of them would say, "Oh, that's like those are like flowers," and no, that some would say, "No, this looks like a lot of trees and everything." And the white part they were saying, I'm not too sure what that is, but it sure is white. Maybe it's a lot of salt, which was not too far off, actually. So, they were able to replicate that pretty well. And you're going to see some other images right now of that. But when they were able to finish the project, then I told them, let's refine, let's actually, sharpen the image. And then I would show them the one that you see where it says C. They were able to say, "Oh my God, that looks great!" And then like a few of them started chiming in, "Oh, that's White Sands. I know it. My mom took me there, or my dad took me there." And so they were starting to make sense of what they were able to build and correlate it with the stuff that they were able to see from the image. And they started to build that experience that was a very fun and learn and understanding for them to understand what satellites do, what the imagery can do. I also shared some other images I didn't put in this presentation, but also some of the images that were taken around that time of this image particular, where you get to see on a clear day, you can actually use some of the satellite data from a GOES satellite, where you can get, excuse me, where you can actually get temperatures, varying temperatures through infrared radar. I'm sorry, infrared sensors, and you could actually get temperature regions and which is cooler, which is hotter. Why is it cooler over here as opposed to it's hotter there? And why do you see those differences? And so I juxtaposed all of those images, and they were able to really, really ask a ton of questions. Oh my God, they asked a ton of questions, and it was great. It was great for me interacting with them, and I definitely burned a lot of calories that day. But I can guarantee you this: it was great. It was a great opportunity for those guys to actually really learn more about satellite data and replicating what they see through Legos. Here are some of the other ones that were made. The gentleman on the right got the green part and the white for White Sands, very elaborate. They just wish they had more time. This one on the left is actually not of the images, is based on another image that I showed them of the El Paso area where there were some other volcanoes as well. So it's not exactly, pertaining to the one we just saw, but these other ones are just some of the kids in action building what they could see. Some were kind of like a big cornucopia of stuff, and they see that guy on the right. The one on the left was just taking his time, really very meticulously, getting every single details he could. And so you got to see a varying scope of detail from the kids, whether how they were just putting things together to make it look cool versus I really want to get as close to accurate as what I see up there on the screen. And that was a great learning tool. It was phenomenal. I loved it. We actually did this again also in the fall where we had a smaller camp, did the same thing, and it was also a big hit with the kids. I think one of these things, especially when you're interacting with them and making them kind of use their imagination, getting them in that frame. Hey, we're going to launch these satellites. We're going to go around the room and, do this. I think that was a great way for them to really, you know, understand and learn a little bit about science and really like if the questions weren't, the questions themselves were just a great way of understanding that their interest, their curiosity was piqued and they wanted to know more. And I think this is one of the better, one of the more successful activities and arrangements that we actually did with these kids. Here's another group. Again, this is of the green area. That's a gentleman that was shown in the other one. The one on the left is a girl where she actually did very well. So she was just like, I just wish I had more time. It's like, I know, I'm sorry. It's like, but she actually had a lot of fun, and she also her in particular actually a lot of questions regarding, well, what did satellites do? Is this and is this how we do it? Is this how what? How do we get better imaging? How do we like make it focus? And we talked about, well, it has to deal with pixels, and more pixels, the more accurate, the more refined resolution, improves as you get more pixels. And they were saying, oh, okay, so it's kind of like more Legos than Legos. Yeah, but we don't have that many Legos. And she said, I want more Legos. I was like, well, okay, hold on. So, but the engagement with these kids was phenomenal. It was great. So that's pretty much my takeaway here for dealing and interacting with these students at these summer camps. Phenomenal success, much, and I posted this, and you'll see in just a little bit also on my blog where Holly was actually able to direct some of the people who are doing things with Legos and satellite data in activities for various ages. They could actually go there, and I'll show that a little bit later. Now, the other thing is the service learning program. So the service learning program, I'm the best way I can probably, in a nutshell, tell you it's kind of like an internship that's not paid. It's almost like volunteership, but you're getting credit that is reflected in your transcripts. If you go as your college student at EPCC and you partake in this service learning program and the activities therein, you are able to, as a student, really come out polishing up your skill sets, learning how to interact with the community. So you're learning communication skills. And in particular, the service learning program specifically made a specific learning module uh, for those who are interested at the college level, and it's open for everybody at EPCC, where those who are interested can learn a little bit more about science and interact with the science community and engage also the El Paso community so that they can, show them what they learned, right? And really start to refine their skills and their communication skills specifically, especially when it's related to science. So they're able to take these ideas and such that they learn through the service learning program module, which is including the GLOBE program. They learn about the environmental aspect, learning about the environmental science that's being conducted here in the El Paso area, why they're doing it, why it's important, how does it affect them, and how the data that they collect not only helps us in the research area, but also helps other people learn and get more engaged to know, just be aware of their surroundings. So the El Paso Community, the service learning program is one of the best, I guess, conduits that we utilize for engaging students of early college. So these are high school students going into college, and a lot of them actually have taken, especially I've noticed, especially specifically the high school students that are taking college credit courses, they really gravitate to this. They're very, very, interested in it, and they want to learn more. And the incorporation of these globe resources and protocols helps a lot in our curriculum development, from biology to astronomy to geology to physics, right? And so those are the main ones I've actually worked with. Primarily, we've used a lot of the Globe products to help with our physics courses, our biology courses. In fact, about a year and a half ago, the biology students were using land cover to understand and study trees and the different types of trees and bushes and other types of vegetation that exist here in the desert area in the Chihuahuan Desert, how they have changed over the years. And so that was used in biology. And astronomy helps us understand other planetary environments by learning about this planet right here. And a lot in physics, I mean, it's kind of, I've used this a lot actually for my physics classes, especially when we start to talk about fluid dynamics and thermodynamics and tying that into anything from Bernoulli's principles to understanding emissivity. These are some major topics that I've specifically used for the curriculum so that students can get, a better understanding of the physical processes that we interact all the time. And the STEAM opportunities that come from the service learning, like I said, if you partake in this module specifically designed in the service learning program there at EPCC that incorporates Globe, they're able to communicate. A lot of it is a communication, the art of communication, if you will, that is employed, excuse me, into this part of understanding science and being able to relate it to others. So some of the things that, as an example, this is my solar system class that I'm grading right now, actually, since we're doing finals. It's one of the modules that I have already incorporating in the Blackboard website there, NASA Globe Service Learning Program. And in that service learning program, I don't know if you can see it well enough, but there are training videos on how to download, install, and start using the Globe Observer. Also, what the Globe program's all about, and then why do we even bother? Like I was focusing on clouds. Why do we bother with clouds? Well, there's a video in there, and there's tutorials there to understand the science behind the data collection, the science that they're learning in the classroom, how it's going to be applied to their understanding of certain physical processes that govern pretty much everywhere on this planet and similarly on other planets, in particular for this astronomy class. And how do you get information from your Globe Observer app? So I made these little tutorials of where to identify, how to take, first of all, cloud data using the cloud protocol there on the Globe Observer app, and how to find the data that you collected in your cell phone. Once you download it, where can you find your data? And so I show them there's a tutorial that I also made for that. They have to complete. So the great thing is that those people who actually are involved with the service learning program, they have to complete 20 hours worth of service learning. I equated that to basically 60 observations. So each student that is involved in it, they can do 60 observations to get credit, and they get credit and it shows up on their transcript. And I do have students that have done that. In fact, I'm grading some more papers, and there's quite a few students that actually have done this, I think, this fall compared to last fall. So it's kind of great. So we're kind of seeing that an increase on that. So 60 observations over a semester, which is about anywhere between 2 months if it's a short semester, or the long version. Yeah, it's a lot. It gets it gets big pretty quick. And then again, these are some of the things that even for those that are not, doing the actual learning module, service learning module, they get to do it as a final. I get them somehow, or I'm going to get them somehow. I incorporated it also into the labs. And this is a lab final that they're doing right here, and they're able to use the Globe Observer app as a tool, as another, I guess you could say, learning tool, data collection tool that they can add to their repertoire at the beginning of every semester. Okay, whether it be physics or astronomy, in my classes, they're always going to be taking the first lab, which is actually using your five senses and using them, describing your environment. And then we build on that lab until we get to the final lab. And these are for my online classes. And I also do this also for my in-person classes too, but primarily for the online classes, because since, we're doing everything virtual, this puts them outside. This puts them in direct contact with their surroundings, and it helps cement those topics that were covered over the semester in a much concrete way, and they can understand much better what the data is telling them. They themselves are aware of their surroundings, and then they get on top of that additional data. Once they collect the data with their cell phone, they get that email from NASA saying, "Hey, this is what our satellites saw when you were taking your data." And then, sure enough, you get to see the satellite data, both the black and white image and the infrared, and they can compare all the ground data and the satellite data and make a complete mental model of that they experience and how it pertains to the topics that they learned, whether it be in astronomy or in physics in geology. Some of my geology professors, colleagues are actually use this also, and also in biology. So this is a great technique and tool from the science aspect of things, right? And these are also offered as extra credit for students as well. And the curriculum, when you add this to like the repertoire of physics tools or astronomy tools or whatever science tool you want to talk about, it's a great way because it's again free. Everybody loves free, and everybody loves to be on their phone. You're going to use your phone in my class for something good, right? So you're going to do some science. So they're able to learn so much about that and really engage, and even engaged me a lot on trying to ask questions. It's like, well, why is this, this area, for example, if you're looking at satellite data that deals with infrared, it's like, why is this area blue or green and this whole area is dark as heck, like really gray? And it's like, well, look at the temperature scale right here on the right side, and you're going to find out you can use that to help identify certain physical features, and they start to make sense, and everything starts to click. And it's a great way for them to understand, again, like I said, those physical topics. Now, they're able to then apply this to real world situations, especially here in the El Paso area, since we are building well, I'll purpose that. Well, they're proposing of building two AI facilities, data facilities in the area. This helps a lot of people kind of connect with the environment, kind of figuring out, well, okay, it doesn't rain that much here, and our water resources are kind of limited. And some of those questions have already popped up dealing with that, dealing with when they were actually using the Globe Observer app. And it was kind of interesting to say, oh, okay, they're starting to be a little bit more engaged now, my older students. And so, this kind of helps them bring their, feet back down on the ground to really understand it's like, hey, no, we got to take care of what we have here, the resources that we have are very important to the El Paso area and to Juarez. Just to give you an idea, important to know this and to learn more about our desert environment, because Juarez, which is about, if I'm not mistaken, over 2.5 million in population compared to the El Paso area, which is only 600 and something thousand in population. We all share the same water resources underground, and it's being fast depleted. Using this, and I've used this actually, especially in astronomy, believe it or not, to help us bring awareness of like, hey, our environments are really important. Go out, learn about what the land change that's actually occurring, learn about the weather changes from the beginning of the semester to now. How does that affect our resources, especially when it pertains to water? So they're able to make more sense and actually, build on that. And on building that, there are some other students that, even though they're not in the sciences, right? They're actually more in the liberal arts, in communications. And this is perfect for this, like a great segue for that, in that the Globe program has helped quite a few students, especially this one that I have right here. That's me in my PhD garb. And this is the student, great student of mine who's actually helped with translating. She's not a science person. She does like science, but she's more of a more of a language person. I can translate. And it's like, you know what? How about you learn science and translate? And let's work on this. She was actually the translator for translated a lot of the stuff that you see, which I'm about to show you, that's posted up on the on my blogs there from the Globe site. Excuse me. So the service learning program gave her an opportunity not only to practice her skills in translation from English into Spanish and vice versa, Spanish into English, with this Globe Observer service learning program that was developed here. She was able to then put that also on her transcript, and that looks very. I mean, clearly working with the Globe program does kind of hurt people's attention. And I think one of the things that she was able to take away from this was she learned a lot about science. She was able to translate, and it really honed her skills. So if you just click on this, oh shucks, let me see if I go back over here. There is, huh. Okay, well, let me just show you really quick. um where is it? Right here. So if I'm just going to quickly sign in. So just to give you an idea, so she did the most recent translation for for the blogs that I actually posted, and she did a good job, heck of a job. I mean, very talented woman, actually. Very impressed with the work that she's done, and she learned a lot and had a lot of fun with it. So this is just an example of some of the things that she did. So if you click on this, all of these, all the anything you see in Spanish, I had her translate, and so the English part is my part, and then everything below is in Spanish. So that's her work. Her name is Reina Perez, and she has done a phenomenal job. Very proud of her, very pleased for the work that she's done and her interest and in, you know, combining her skill set to help us understand a little bit more about science and basically promoting science to our international community, because our international community here is, we have a lot of students actually do come to El Paso Community College from Juarez. And so as they're learning English, it's good for them to understand a little bit about science in their native tongue and then start to build from there. And so I'm very greatly appreciated to Reina Pettis. She just graduated from EPCC this summer, and very proud of her for her accomplishments, and very thankful for that she was able to help us in this globe partnership that we have here at EPCC. And last but not least, Kristen Weaver sent me some information about the PACE satellite data collection. And when she sent that, I thought that was a kind of cool thing. And maybe we can actually match some of the data that we can collect here on the ground with the PACE satellite. And I thought it was a great idea. So, yeah, so that's exactly what we did. I actually announced it to my students. I gave them the times that they were able to do it, at least for the remainder of the semester. And hopefully they're collecting that data right now. But I did announce it to my students, and I actually did one right before I actually here before starting the presentation. I actually went on my bike because I need to get some exercise. Went up the street, up the hill actually, and did a cloud observation and collected some data according to the times where you would have the PACE satellite that just came out. Yep. And here it is. This is the actual website. I know if anybody is interested in this, you can actually get that data. Let me share my screen one more time. There we go. So right here, you would have to, I don't know if you can tell at the very top, you would have to put in your Latin longitude right there, which I did, and that will give you the proper Latin long and times where the satellite will actually pass over your overhead. And yeah, you can actually go out there and collect some data. And that's exactly what I had been doing these past couple of days. And actually having my students go out there was also a really great way for them to get, I offered it as extra credit. So hopefully they're taking advantage of that right now. So there you go. There's more information about the PACE satellite. And in conclusion, pretty much what I thought was very interesting is that utilizing all of these tools and bringing the Globe program to a wide audience has brought in a lot of interest, a lot of questions, a lot of curiosity from the general public, from schools that I've actually visited in the El Paso area, to my own class, to my other colleagues' classroom setting. They're able to utilize these tools, these resources for their own use. It's been very successful, and the more we have actually implemented the this into the classroom, the more positive feedback we actually get. The better the students are able to understand these physical processes, like I said, thermodynamics, understand the emissivity of certain land cover types. Actually, that's one of the things that we've actually tied to when we study emissivity with some of these globe protocols. And it's a great learning tool, and still exploring the many ways that can be actually implemented in the classroom, and also how we can make it more in a broad sense to the general public. So some of the things that we really saw a lot of promise in is a collaboration that we've had with La Nube, and we plan on doing an engineering collaboration in February, and very much looking forward to that, and actually bringing in other satellite imagery related type activities in which will embody and incorporate a lot of the land cover and cloud cover data collection protocols, so that they can make a better satellite, if you will, with in the engineering camp that's going to be in the February of next year there at the La Nube. So again, engaging with the students has been a great positive. It's been nothing but pleasure and joy on my end, having to bring people and in general to science. It's been great. I've had a lot of great feedback from them, like I said, and the utilization, all the resources like pertaining specifically to cloud cover and also land cover has been phenomenal. It's been great, absolutely promising. And some of the future projects that we actually have are to increase some of these air campaigns where we can actually have students go out and take data measurements and understand a little bit about aerosols, understand a little bit about the cloud cover. What do the contrails mean when they are short-lived as opposed to persistent spreading? What are some of the things that we're going to be encountering when it comes to dust storms? The students, like I said, when I mentioned earlier, and when I went to Tornillo, those students were kind of curious. It's like, why do we have so many dust storms? Well, and why are you guys so worried about it? It's like, well, let's bring it down home and talk a little bit more about that. And so a lot of good stuff has come out with these type of interactions. Building on that satellite data and land cover protocols to enhance the college curriculum, I cannot stress enough that a lot of this is very useful and very effective, especially when it comes to understanding geology and biology. For physics, I can tell you right now, like I just mentioned, understanding thermodynamics to fluid dynamics, these are great ways of understanding those physical concepts. When you introduce these protocols into the classroom, you engage the students who are directly looking at the data that you've collected. How better to really understand the physical process and physics when you're outside the greatest laboratory that anybody can get. And it's free. It's a big thing. So the other thing is also understanding how to incorporate more these products and these resources to understanding our desert environment. And our desert environment is very unique, from the dust storms to the monsoons to the changes, whether it be the urbanization of this desert area and the things that have been going on, utilizing that as a means to bring in also a a historic aspect as to understanding the Rio Grande Valley. What is so important about the Rio Grande Valley? How does it pertain to the treaty that we have with Mexico and sharing water resources? It brings up those types of topics to the forefront so students can make sense and make the reality more concrete that, yes, learning about everything around you does build this very unique experience to say, oh, I get it now. I'm using these tools to help me understand about the world around me from every aspect. And one of the things that we do look forward to, not only doing more educational and research using these protocols and resources, but also looking toward the future for future collaborations, whether it be here in the good old United States or international, especially across the border, dealing specifically, focusing on land cover and cloud, and understanding clouds in the atmospheric world, if you will, and using that as a jumping point to learn about our desert landscape and how we're actually incorporating this as a major tool for us understanding desert vegetation, how it grows. We actually have a project that we're working on that's we're bringing in people from also students from Juarez, also learning more about our desert landscape, our desert vegetation. How does it grow? How is it changing over time? We're working on a few grants to study that aspect and bringing in the tools that the GLOBE program provides. And with that, I thank you. That's pretty much it. I want to special thanks to the partners here at EPCC, from Dr. Adriana Perez and Dr. Olinka de la Fernandez. They're great colleagues. They also went to the meeting last year and represented EPCC and all the work that we do. And with that, I close.